Hi, this is Margaret Maloney, and welcome to the Death Dhamma podcast. Together, we will consider life, death, and impermanence. Because in between birth and death, we lose things, not just our glasses and our keys. We lose identities, relationships, ideas, and more. But what we can gain right now is facing this together, and we will gain freedom, peace, and progress on our path. Hi, Shelley. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Death Dhamma podcast. And I would love it if you would introduce yourself to our audience.
Bless you. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Shelley F Knight, and I am author of Positive Changes, a Selfkick book, and more recently, Good Grief, the A to Z approach of modern day grief healing.
I love that. Now, I like that you use the phrase self-kick, and I think I read it in maybe both your books titles, maybe just the one, but will you just share with us, like, what does that mean? I think I know, but I want to hear it from you because I love that phrase, self-kick.
So my first book, Positive Changes, was humorous. And, there's so many self-help books out there, but they're kind of like really gentle, little. And personally, for me to make a difference, to make that positive change, I need more of a kick. Tell it how it is, skip to the end. And so it's a self-kick book. It's a little bit more oomphy than your average feathery, angelic approach.
I love that. So when I hear you say that, I get this impression that if you are, working with me through your book, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, Margaret, come on, here's how it is. Here are some things to do. Get up off your tailbone and get into life, or something like that. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, stop looking backwards. You're not going that way. Keep going forwards. The best is yet to come.
There you go. And see, I think that's a theme that I want us all to be, I want to say we can all relate to, but you and I both know that isn't true. Otherwise people wouldn't need to talk to us or hear from us. So I will say that is a theme and a goal that I would love to see everyone who's gone through difficulties embrace, because the thing happened, whatever it is, the loss has happened. And now here we are. And so here we are. And perhaps you can share what led you to be the person who is helping us with this self-kick. What brought you to this place?
So my background is nursing, and I don't know if many people know that because they think I'm an author, but yeah, I was a nurse for many, many years. And for most of my career, I was a chemotherapy nurse. So I worked with hematology and oncology patients. Mm-hmm. And when I started my nursing degree, even before going into like the oncology branch, I believed I was going to a career of healthcare. You're there to make people healthy. And if I'm honest, Margaret, I was totally unprepared, because with healthcare, there's actually a lot of death. Right. And when I started my degree, when I did my first year of nursing, I hadn't really had much loss in my personal life. Like, my grandparents were alive, my aunties, my uncles, my friends. But with the most, I don't know, strange synchronicity or strange timing, as I started to experience loss of my patients in life, it started to have this ripple effect in my personal life. Like, then my grandparents did all die, then two of my aunties died, a friend took his own life, and things like that. So suddenly, from going like, this happy-go-lucky character, my life was touched by so much loss and so much grief and so much death. And it kind of took me on the path which ultimately led to me writing Good Grief, the A to Z approach of modern day grief healing. And I think my whole message for the book, really, or the one thing I'd love to get across, is that when we talk about grief, people always think it's death of a loved one. And it's not just that. That's bereavement. Grief is the loss of anything with which you have an emotional connection. So it could be like your health, relationships, a dream, self-confidence, direction, even like sense of control, like with the pandemic, you can't go to work, you need to do this, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. So to me, grief is the loss we have in life without an actual death.
Thank you I really appreciate you spelling that out. And that is absolutely what we want to investigate on this season of the Death Dhamma podcast, is what about these? And I call it sometimes like the small deaths, the little deaths, because they're not the death of a sentient being that we're close to, but as you said, they're the death of something that I'm going to throw in the word attached, something that we're bonded or attached to. We thought something was going to be a certain way. And now as I hear you say that, I'm envisioning there you were, and you came from nursing school into your nursing practice, and you hadn't yet hit the big death, the big D. And then all of a sudden, it's all around you because it's in your work and it's in your personal life. And that's a lot. I feel like that's a lot for anyone to handle all at one time in their life. And
Yeah,
right? I mean, was it?
yeah, and it kind of, I'm sure it didn't, but when you have these drastic changes in your life, it seems to all happen at once.
Mm-hmm.
But I know, like my granddad died one January and my father the next, and then there was like the patients in between and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And then as these people die, you do have the loss and the grief, but then as you said, like the expectations that your dad would give you your wedding and your granddad would be there for this and that, all those expectations and dreams go as well. So it's never just one loss. It's like multifaceted.
Oh, and I just the other day, so my father has been gone since 2012. And just the other day, I had that minute, like they sneak up on me. Oh, I wish I could tell dad. And then I was like, you can, you're just going to tell dad differently now. And so I hear what you're saying. There are those things where it's like, I'll go to a really good restaurant, and my mom loved good restaurants and good food, and she was an amazing cook. And I went, oh, I can't wait to tell mom I went to, and there it is. And there it is. So I hear you. And what did you do in the midst of all this?
I think I was a very different person then. So I think back then I was doing what loads of us do with any grief, whether it's loss of a relationship or death of a loved one. I just got busy, and that's not the right thing to do. I know that now. If I heading towards the age of 50, I know now keeping busy and pushing it down is the worst thing you can do. The best thing to do with grief is to grieve. But yeah, I kept busy. I kept nursing, trying to make it better for other families that still had their loved ones. So I wasn't the best person at grieving, but I learned along the way.
I wasn't the best person at it either. And I did the exact same thing that you're talking about, which was I would be very busy. And there was a story I tell, I'll tell it briefly because people have heard it before, which is when I was going through it, and I was teaching. So I'd be driving to teach a class. And on the way driving to teach the class, crying, just ugly crying. And I didn't even care what other people in the cars around me thought. So that's good, I guess. And then I carried with me like a little fix my face kit so that I could fix my face and then get in front of my students and teach. And then I get back in my car and drive home. And then again, crying, ugly crying. And then when I got home, I didn't have to fix my face because there was no reason, but yeah, definitely. So yes, I also used busyness to cope. So now in hindsight, what would you recommend in place of busyness? Is there something you'd say, maybe try this other thing instead? What would you do?
Yeah, the total opposite, if I'm honest. I would totally embrace your grief, and it will hurt, I'm sure. It's so raw and you feel angry and cheated and fearful, and it affects you physically, intellectually, emotionally, socially, spiritually. So I would just say totally embrace it. Do not push it down. Don't be strong. Don't put off your grief to a future event. Don't grieve the way someone tells you to, just full on, ugly cry, get that fix my face kit. But I always say, just in life, even if you don't think you are grieving, I think everyone's grieving for something personally, but if you are going through a grief process, I would sit in silence every day for 10 minutes. And I think that's a good thing to do in life anyway, because we do keep busy and we keep filling the silences. And it's just, I want people to get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. Sit every day, 10 minutes in silence, phone away, people away, and see what comes up for you and tap into that. I think it's so valuable. Don't suppress your emotions.
So you mean I can't turn it on and off like a faucet? That's what I wanted to do. So I had to. So yes, one of my experiences of loss was, of course, definitely, as you already mentioned, like that loss of the feeling of control. So there was part of me that I wanted to be able to kind of turn it on and off like a faucet. A challenge I had, I want to hear if you've encountered this in others. A challenge I had was when I had time to cry, I couldn't cry. And so then I could release. Have you seen that in anyone else?
I've seen it in me. So, even with the loss of like my grandparents and, my friends and things like that, my husband and I have been on I want to say awful, but I believe in life lessons, things happen for a reason, but an awful fertility journey. So we've had many, many miscarriages, and you try and create that silence and that sort of dealing with the loss before you try again kind of thing. And you sit there and you're almost like trying to do like the breathing, getting angry, watching a weepy film, all the things you can do with grief. And it just doesn't come because it's not natural. You just think, quick cry before the kids come home from school, quick cry before I go to work. And it won't be. It'll be those random moments when you're in the supermarket, when you're driving, a certain, a scent will come up or a tune on the radio, it
Those are valuable.
Yeah, it's just like, I call it like the grief tsunami. Like, it doesn't come when you force it, but it comes in this massive wave when you least expect it, years after the loss.
What a perfect term, the grief tsunami. And it's like, so as you say that, I'm visualizing it, and it's like I'm on the beach, but I didn't notice that the water receded, and so bam, the tsunami comes.
Yeah, you think you've got, again, control, you think you've got it, you think you've nailed it, but we're spiritual beings, we're not predictable. It can happen at any time.
Yeah, sometimes I say humans, we're just random. We're random critters. We want to think that we're not, I mean, I think there's some things we do that are predictable. Like, I suppose people listening to you and I talk, someone who knows you listening to this, we go, yeah, Shelley, I knew you would try to power through it. And definitely people who know me would be like, yeah, Margaret, we knew you'd try to power through it. How did that go? So in some ways we're random, and then I guess in some ways we're not. But maybe the people who know us wouldn't have foreseen that we would have tried to bring this topic to people, you doing it in your area and me with my group of people. So maybe that's a random thing that has happened. Now, you mentioned that we could all be experiencing and grieving a loss at any time. And in fact, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think what you said is you believe that we are, that most of us are. And would you teach me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so in Good Grief, the A to Z approach modern day grief healing, it's not purely about grief as in, the death of a loved one. And I talk in there about mini deaths. And in it, I say that when we go through life, we're experiencing mini deaths frequently. So it is sort of, like I had loss of pregnancy, but I've also had loss of finances, health, home, relationships. So these are all like mini deaths. These are all, I suppose, bite-sized grief experiences. And I think it happens. I think we sign up for life lessons, and this is why we have love and loss. But I think when we're experiencing these mini deaths, the broken relationships, the loss of confidence, the loss of health, whatever it is we're going through, it's like a resilience tool that we're learning gently what loss feels like.
And that resiliency, what I've learned is that the resiliency is what makes a difference in how we move forward. Many of us, maybe perhaps even any of us. And is there something you've observed with these mini deaths where we can use them to help us become more resilient?
Yeah, there's many ways that tell us how we're going to grieve, and that is a lot of that is observation. So we see how our parents have grieved and how our teachers in other forms have grieved. Like, do they say sort of like, that doesn't happen in our family, stiff upper lip,
okay,
and things like that. Whereas I'm with you, like, the fix my face kit. I do the ugly crying, say why I'm crying in front of my kids. I'm really open about the way I grieve.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way we can do with it. But there's so much research beyond what I've observed. And it shows us that, I want to take you back to like Viktor Frankl, who I studied my nursing degree. He said that we don't suffer from suffering alone. We only suffer when there's no meaning. And that's a real key thing in resilience, that if we can find a reason why has this loss happened and a new way forward, we make such good grief recovery. There's other research, like widows, if they smile in the first 3 months after their loved ones died, they make a better recovery. There's all these weird and wonderful research things.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and there's loads of good grief, tools out there. And it is about looking how far you've come, looking when you've gone through difficult things in your past. How did you come through it? What are the patterns? And so people, I don't know what it's like for you, but here in the UK, it's a bit strange grief, which is why I really want to write a book about it. Because when a loved one dies, they say, well, that's it, your life's over, you're never going to get over it. You've got to grieve for the rest of your life out of respect, and all these bizarre things. But then there's that other side where if you're still crying 3 months later, they say, pull yourself together, it's been quarter of a year. That's what I'm saying. Don't listen to how other people grieve. If you feel okay, snotting and crying, if you feel okay to book a holiday and move on, do what's right for you. Trust your intuition, know your grief, know yourself. Again, look at the tools that have got you through life so far, because you have 100% success rate today.
That's beautiful. Okay, so I'm over here in the United States, and so we're your naughty cousins, right? So although I don't think the UK is grieving the loss of the US anymore, but that was before you and I. But so yes, over here, your naughty cousins. I think sometimes we have a similar attitude. So it's interesting to share that cultural thing about. On the one hand, some people expect you to never be okay, big picture in your life, but then at about the 3-month mark, they expect you to get over it. So I'm not really sure what those two things mean to people, other than I think get over it means stop talking about it in public, be okay. We don't want to see you be sad. But then I think there's that big picture, but by the way, you should in some way always be sad. Perhaps maybe something I've felt was a wave of, what are you doing living a full and meaningful life? How dare you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that is the absolute nail on the head. It is like that. The thing is that people always judge you, don't they? Whatever way you grieve, whatever choices you make in life, someone's always going to judge you rather than look at their own life. But there is that sort of thing, what would they think? And I think on a soul level, the person that's died would totally be like, please carry on living your life. My background.
Stop carrying me around.
Yeah, my background's nursing and working at end of life. And so, I'm just with this mindset that if you're still alive, that's a privilege, denied to many. So we shouldn't have that survivor's guilt. We should, just think, look at our own mortality and really live.
That was kind of a mantra I used to use for myself some days. I had a couple of them, but one of them was, I'm not the one who died. That was definitely something I carried with me. It's like, I'm not the one who died, because, and the judging thing, definitely, because people have opinions about what we should do. And then I have found myself after the fact having opinions about when I thought I was helping other people through it. And then I had to realize, like, oh, Margaret, you need to not be judgy about how this person is deciding to handle their grief. You just need to listen to them. So yeah, that built-in the judgy gene. I found I carry the judgy gene. And so that was a good opportunity to learn. And, and you talk about the finding meaning. Sometimes people will say, when you go through something difficult, loss of a job, a miscarriage, financial downturns, people will say that everything happens for a reason. Do you think when somebody says that is helpful? Where does it become helpful to find the meaning? Maybe is a better way for me to ask you that.
Yeah, I think when you're finding the meaning, the clue is that you have to find the meaning. It's not someone else's opinions.
Ah, okay.
I mean, you need to know what's important in your life, what lights you up, what will get you out of bed in the morning. Ultimately, why are you here? You know, what are your interests? What are your dislikes? You know, meaning shouldn't come from someone else saying you need to move on, or it was only a job, or the child wasn't meant to be. I mean, as I said, I had many miscarriages before completing our family. And people say the most bizarre things, almost rude, you know, like, I think it's hard when you have miscarriages. Obviously, I would say that because that's been my journey. But
Right.
people say things like, oh, well, it obviously wasn't meant to be, or just make another one. Most bizarre comment was when someone said that someone's been constipated for 2 weeks. That was their response, like, oh, did I tell you someone's been constipated for 2 weeks? You know, naming no names. And I was just like, really?
As if that's on the same level.
Yeah. And it's, you know, maybe it was their loss of health. Maybe it was all, you know, equal on some strange way. But yeah, people, when you're searching for meaning, it has to come for you. What lights you up? And, you know, that when that judgy gene comes up, dismiss it. If it doesn't sit right with you, dismiss it, you know. Although I do write about this in my Good Grief book, that people say the most bizarre things, and people are generally really rubbish with grief and what to say to the griever. But I would always, someone said something. So whilst I've been, you know, my miscarriage being compared to constipation, or it wasn't meant to be, but, you know, God took it, all this kind of thing. Thank you for all those people that use their voice in that really awkward time of my grief. I will always prefer that awkwardness rather than the other people who, like when my father died, they physically crossed the road as if I didn't feel invisible enough in my grief. They would cross the road to avoid me, you know, in case I was a sobbing mess. So yeah, if you are with a griever, you know, always find something to say, even if your words are, I don't know what to say, then say that.
Those seem like really good words, because as you're speaking, and I'm you know, and I'm thinking of things, and I know in the past, before I learned more about grief and loss, that I was really awkward, and that I could look back and I know I regurgitated some of those trite sayings that, you know, I just want to go back and slap old Margaret and say, stop it. But I think that part of what you're saying is that some acknowledgement, even awkward acknowledgement, is better than no acknowledgement. Is that fair?
That's absolutely it. I think, well, for me, let me take it to me, it's drop the judgy gene. I think for me, if I'm standing there feeling awkward and I don't say anything, that's to do with me. That's me thinking, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to say anything wrong. But it's really, we need to go outside of ourselves and our ego and our embarrassment and shame, and just be there for the person that needs you most in that moment. And it's not us, it's the other person. So yeah, always say the awkward things. But I just say, I mean, I say this in the Good Grief book, like, if you don't know what to say, I'm in front of you, but I really don't know what to say.
I think that's perfect. Because I guess as you're saying that, I'm thinking I would have appreciated that. Absolutely. To just, but you're there, like, so you're there and you're engaging with me, and you're here. So like your presence is here, and maybe you're hugging me and you're sitting with me and you're acknowledging, I don't have the words, but I'm giving you my presence. I'm giving you myself.
Yeah, and it works with anything. As I say, you know, grief isn't just about death of a loved one. You know, if a friend's relationship breaks down, or they lose their job that they loved, even if they lose their job they hated, just say, you know, sorry to learn about your loss, you know, delete as applicable, whatever their loss is. I don't know what to say. It's not just about death, you know, because sometimes, you know, I know, like, awkwardly in the past, like, you know, friends' relationships broken down, and didn't like the guy in the first place, but I didn't say thank God for that, you know, never liked him anyway. You just sort of say like, oh, sorry to hear that your relationship broke down. Don't really know what to say.
Right.
And it just takes away that judgy gene we discussed earlier. But you're not saying how you think or what you think. There's no opinion. You're just saying, I don't know what to say. It's an icebreaker. It's a conversation opportunity without any awkwardness.
I'm thinking of it as you're speaking. I'm thinking of it as it's a being with. It's the being with, and that in itself is such a gift to just be with someone. And yeah, like maybe you didn't like the person they were seeing, maybe you're like, oh, that person is horribly wrong for you, but they're still hurt. Or maybe the job was a sucky job, and you looked and you're like, oh my gosh, why do you keep that job? But it still hurts to have I think maybe some of it goes back to a sense of control. Like to lose a job, even if you didn't love the job, but if you didn't get to have a say in it, that's part of that painful process. Yeah. And if you did have a say in some of it, it still could be part of the painful process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know, like, the difference between losing a job and you resigning from a job feels very different. The same as like you ending a relationship and you being dumped. They're both endings, but they feel very different.
Yes, but frequently endings are hard for us humans. We don't always like endings. And I guess that's just part of the uncertainty and the fear of, unknown and the control things. Let's go. I'd like to kind of pull back on I want to come back and pull on the thread of meaning of finding meaning. And because you were talking about how if somebody was able to smile or laugh in the first 3 months after a loss, or find a meaning in a loss, that helped us become more resilient. I'm paraphrasing, so hopefully I'm expressing that correctly. And so what are some steps you would recommend to help somebody get to that place of meaning?
So like I said earlier, the 10 minutes a day, sort of sitting with you, learning what comes up for you. Throughout my life, despite the anger and the fear I've had with losses, I've always found something to believe in. And I think that's key. I mean, ultimately in life, you should always believe in yourself. But, if you want to believe in a faith or a religion, God, Allah, whatever you want to believe in, find something to believe in yourself to start with, but something beyond yourself. And maybe for you, it's a sense of community, volunteering, joining a church, a sports group, something, but just connect to something bigger than yourself. I think that's really important because we get in our own way in life, don't we? We're often our own guilty block. So I think 10 minutes with yourself so you discover who you are and what's coming up, connection to yourself or something bigger than yourself. I would look at where your mind wanders in those peaceful moments, like, are you sitting there and you're working as a teacher, but your mind wanders off to be an author? Find out where your mind and your heart wanders in those quiet moments when you allow it.
And is that how your mind wandered off to be an author?
So one of my miscarriages was like quite far on compared to the others, and I'd been documenting that pregnancy, and even after the loss I still was writing. And then I had another awful pregnancy. It's kind of a happy ending because we have Daisy, who's now 7, but she was one of triplets or certainly twins. And it's in all these losses and these really challenging times that I would write, I would journal, kind of unaware of it. That's what I'm saying, look where your mind goes. But later on in life, I came to realize that I write when I'm stressed, I write when I'm heartbroken. And so, that's where my mind and heart would wander.
Oh, I see. So you found this pattern, if I can say it that way, of this is what's writing is helping me.
Yeah, everyone has different things. Some people might want to go out jogging, and so you might want to do a sense of community and volunteer and things like that. Other people like doing oracle card readings, other like reading self-help or self-kick books, connecting with Mother Nature. But it's just finding what lights you up. And if you're not of that positive mindset, because I came across this so much when I was writing Positive Changes, a self-kick book, people was just like, Shelley, but I don't know what I like. Then look at what you dislike and get rid of it, because you're still
take that off the list.
Yeah, exactly. It's toxic positivity. I think it's got to be brilliant, but you're not feeling brilliant. Then look at your life and look at what you don't like. And when you start to discard, like the jobs, the clothes size, the people, you'll have a greater sense of meaning, because you won't be wasting your time or your energy on toxic things that don't serve you or you've outgrown. So just, keep going. Whether you do it from like finding the likes or get rid of the dislikes, you will get there. You will.
Because that's going to give you the energy. I really appreciate that, getting rid of the dislikes, because I, as you do that, I'd like picturing like actually the clearing away, right? And then that gives you the energy, because you're not bogged down by the loss and, oh, I don't like this thing in my life. You're freeing up space to be filled with something you do like, or noticing something you do like.
Yeah, no, I believe in that. I honestly believe when we let go of something better comes in. And I'm a bit of a decluttering addict. I do make my family quite nervous. Like, have you played with that toy in the last 6 months? I just like to get rid of stuff, like even earlier on today, my son's a little bit gutted because I bought this really luxurious car earlier this year. But then it costs a fortune to run. I've just landed a new job where I walk to a local place of work, so I don't use it. So I thought, well, I'll get rid of it. I'll have more money every month. It's better for the environment, all these kind of things. And it is just getting rid of things that are no longer of value to it. And that might be a boyfriend in your relationship. It might be a posh car you can't drive. Just keep doing it. Clothes that no longer fit, how you want to feel or how you want to be, or your body shape. Get rid of them. Just sell it, donate it, recycle it, something. But even, if everything seems a bit overwhelming, I think, Shelley, you're a bit energetic for me, love, if I'm honest. Start with your emails and just declutter your emails. Are you ever going to buy that product from that person? If not, unsubscribe. It's just the little things in life, whether you're getting rid of an email, a car, a relationship. I honestly believe when you let them go, you show the universe you're ready for more, and positive things fill the void.
That makes sense. I'm picturing like all these little like tethers and things hooking in as you're talking about them. Like, there's the bunch of emails and that's a hook. And then there's the email that comes from that company where you think you want to buy that cashmere sweater, but you're not going to. There's a hook.
Yeah.
And, maybe some negative relationships, there's a hook, and all these things hooking on you, tying you down. And we don't want that. And you're right. And when we cut those tethers, we are free. And then, like you said, something can come take the space. Do you think that, so you went through, you went in and you became a nurse, and then all of a sudden you're dealing with death on the job and death in your family, and you're really getting, a full-on introduction to loss. And then, you move forward in your life. And do you think that you have some certain approaches that you live now, that you use now in your life to be prepared for either the mini deaths or the big deaths? Do you have like a philosophy or way of living?
Yeah. So when I was nursing, as I said, personally, I had lots of death and loss as well. And I started to realize through many stories, many patients and many losses, that we are more than our physical body. We're not just here to suffer. We are here for life lessons for ourselves, for, a connectedness, like the universe, whatever you want to call it. And so I started to see shifts as people were dying. And so I'd be aware of temperature changes, energy changes, skin changes. Like the non-verbal would then start talking to loved ones who had passed many years before. So I had a lot of lessons while still nursing. But then with my own miscarriages that were happening and my losses in my personal life, as I said, you go through life and you'll find things that work for you. And for me, it's spirituality and writing. And so I started writing and things like that. So I went in clinical. I've kind of come out spiritual because I think we are more than our physical body. We're here for a reason, even if that reason really hurts us at times. But I tend to live my life. I believe we can have a good death, and people think that's like an oxymoron, but I honestly believe we can have a good death. But the key to having a good death is having lived a good life. And so, as I said earlier, being alive is a privilege denied to many, even whatever you're going through right now, whether you've got, a loved one dying, a relationship's broken down, loss of health, whatever it is, you are alive. So please try and search for the positive in that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I saw from my nursing career, whether it was males, females, rich, poor, end of life or second chance at life, there was always like these 5 life lessons. I don't want to say regrets. I want to say they're life lessons because it's how I live my life. And they were really simple. Like the first one was always be happier.
Okay.
And it seems so simple, but I've come to realize that at the end of our life, the little things were the big things all along. So when I tell you today to be happier, we can all relate to this. At some point in our life, we've played down our happiness, like not taken that job because they don't want to end that relationship, or, not laugh because it was inappropriate, but, just be happier.
Okay.
Like we discussed earlier, I was always told by those at the end of life or reliving after, successful cancer treatment, connect to something bigger than yourself. And that's the thing, isn't it? Like we go into that victimhood when something happens to us and we're very, we feel very major in this world, but actually we're quite insignificant in the scheme of things. So always connect to something bigger than yourself, which works 2 ways. You're part of a bigger picture, but also you're never alone. I totally believe in the third one, which my husband and people that used to listen to my podcast would know. I'm a great believer in speaking your truth. And this is a really emotive one. I think all nurses remember a patient. And for me, it was a young man, really. He was in his 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And he had worked all of his life. He had married the girl that his parents said to. He'd done the job that they told him to. He'd never spoken out. And then he came to me with quite a late diagnosis of esophageal cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And so all his life he'd kept those words in. He was going to have like his esophagus and his like voice box removed, so then he would be able to speak. And it was just, I feel tearful now saying it. Like speak your truth. And it doesn't mean you're right when I'm telling you to speak your truth. It
Sure.
just means speaking out what's right for you, 2 sides to every story. And that gentleman has just stuck with me. I left nursing 2 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
I always remember that man that never spoke out in life and then was losing the ability.
Actually losing the ability. That's very visceral. Did he, before he had to have the surgery, did he speak his truth? Do you know?
Yeah, and this is really important to anyone that's listening. Obviously I worked at end of life, but wherever you are in life now, again, speak your truth. And it's, when I was looking after him and other people, I was never asked, to bring in that designer outfit or, the sort of luxurious car or the bank balance. It was always like, are we allowed to bring my dog in? Could you find my strange daughter? It's, at the end of the day, it's about connection. And so, don't wait to the end of your life to right your wrongs or speak your truth. Just do it today. So, yeah, he did build a few bridges, which is really important. Again, good death is like not dying with like agitation and unspoken words in you. So we did put a few things right for him, but it is far easier to do it whilst you're alive and not at the end of your life. Then there was another one, which I like, just do more of what you love. And I've actually recently bought a hoodie for the chilly days here in the UK, and it says on it like, do more of what you love. And it is
beautiful.
Yeah, don't live for the weekends. Do you know what I mean? And I wrote about this in Positive Changes, a Selfkick book.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're working 5 days a week and hate it and you're living for the weekend, that is the equivalent of being unhappy for 5 years and happy for 2. You just wouldn't do it. You wouldn't be unhappy, in 7 years.
Yeah, you wouldn't sign up for that. If somebody said, I'm going to put you through 5 years of hell so then you can have 2 years.
2 weeks. Yeah.
You'd be like, no, that's a horrible deal.
Yeah, but we do it, don't we? Go, oh, it's nearly the weekend. So yeah, do more of what you love. So if you want to go out tonight, and have a drink or go on that course or snog someone's face off, then do it. And the 5th one was always what we should all do, which is just live your life. But by that, I took it to mean when they're saying live your life, it is like we were saying earlier with Judgy Jeans, live your life. What do you want to do? Not sort of marrying the girl you're told to do, not doing that because that's the salary you want, not that because, it's like, I love creative types, the podcasters, the writers, the artists. Mm-hmm. They really light me up. There's so many people with that creativity, that talent, will be doing a totally different job. They'll be working in banks and offices and things like that because, that's a proper job. And that's what happened to me when I left nursing to be an author. Mm-hmm. People would just say, that's very nice, Shelley, but when are you going to get a proper job?
Oh,
two books later, 2 books later, I'm still said like, so when you go back to nursing, do you think you ever go back to nursing? It's like, no,
I'm not doing that anymore.
And it is that meaning, live your life.
But I can envision, like just people thinking like, but nursing is stable and it pays well and we'll always need you. And so like we're imputing our need for security or whatever we think it is on you, and nursing isn't what you need now.
No. I think I changed too much as well. As I said, I went in very clinical and very unprepared because obviously healthcare is a lot about death, as I learned. But, having lost sort of like such precious key people in my life, as well as like, with the job, as I said, I just saw things change, like, like we are more than the physical body. We are more than that, whatever it was that, we have this big long life story, don't we? And we just get stuck in one chapter. So you're more than that chapter of being dumped. You're more than that chapter, of having a miscarriage. And I saw that in the nursing, that we are more than our troubles. We're so much more than that.
That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you. Is there something you would like to add, or is there something that you would have liked me to ask, but I didn't?
I really don't. I think it's been a really beautiful conversation, and hopefully people, have been a little bit of a light bulb moment and thought, that grief is more than the death of a loved one. It is, the loss of a trusted or predicted way of life. No, I love that. I just love sharing the word that, grief is the loss of anything with which we have an emotional connection. Because people, I think, with this pandemic that we've, like I say, been through, I think we're still going through. I think so many people in the world are currently grieving, because they have lost their jobs, their finances, loved ones, confidence, security, things like that. And they are probably grieving, sort of like feeling low, feeling depressed, maybe changing skin or more headaches, a lot of questions about their life. And they might not be aware that they're grieving because no one's died. So I think it's been a really important conversation that we've shared to say, we're kind of all grieving on some level, accept that. And if you need help, beyond this podcast, seek professional help. I don't want the world to suffer in silence. You matter, so seek help.
You've been listening to the Death Dhamma podcast with your host, Margaret Maloney. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on margaretmaloney.com, margaretmeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.